Back in boomer days long past, I lived and worked in a place called Co-op City, which at the time was the largest housing project in the world, or soon would be, as much of it was still under construction. One night I got home from work and went back to my room, and my brother Eddie was already there, back home from wherever. The Wreck of the Mary Deare was playing on a late night movie channel. I had never seen it before. In fact, I'd never heard of it. Neither of us had. But it had only been 10 years since this film's initial release. So how come we never heard of it? It even had big stars like Gary Cooper and Charlton Heston. So how come we'd never heard of it? And we were good. We knew movies. But how come we'd never heard of it? Well, one might as well ask Alfred Hitchcock, who was assigned to make the movie by MGM. But neither he nor screenwriter Ernest Lehman could crack the narrative, so they wound up doing North by Northwest instead. All things considered, I guess that worked out for the best for everyone concerned, except maybe for the Wreck of the Mary Deare. Despite director Michael Anderson's best efforts, neither he nor screenwriter Eric Ambler were able to crack the narrative of Hammond Innes's novel. The Dam Busters, which Michael Anderson also directed, is one of my favorite all-time movies. And when I was younger, I had read a number of Eric Ambler's thrillers, but I had not read the Hammond Innes novel that this movie is based on. Perhaps unfairly, I thought of him as nothing more than a second-rate Alistair MacLean in the boys' own adventure genre, and that bookshelf was already crowded. But looking at the finished movie, it's easy to spot the problem. A few problems, in fact. Our story opens in a storm as the salvage boat Sea Witch comes across what appears to be a derelict freighter drifting through the choppy swells. Charlton Heston, along with his salvage partner, tries hailing the ship, but they get no response. Heston decides to board her, and it's tough going in those high seas, but he makes it. Once safely aboard, he searches the ship. It appears empty, but he is soon waylaid by Gary Cooper, who has assumed command. He's the only survivor of what he says were fires and explosions set off by the crew before they abandoned ship. Heston is more than a little skeptical of Cooper's story and decides to return to his ship, but the seas have risen and he's left dangling on a rope and battered by the waves. He's about to slip and drown when Cooper saves his life by hauling him back aboard the Mary Deare. Heston tells his partner that he's okay and will see him back in port. The Sea Witch takes off and Heston is left alone with Cooper, who plans to beach the Mary Deare on the rocks of a notorious ship's graveyard called the Minkies. All of this is pretty engaging stuff, with excellent miniature and stunt work. In fact, the miniatures here are much better than the ones in Ben-Hur, which was released the very same year. Perhaps it was the storm that helped make those miniatures work. They didn't look real, but they looked good. But once back ashore, the movie runs aground with a series of courtroom scenes where a desperate Cooper tries to explain that the fires and explosions aboard the Mary Deare were an attempt by the owners to sink the ship to cover the illegal transfer of jet engines to a communist country. These exposition dumps and the movie itself are not helped by Cooper's character, who comes off as a stubborn and ill-tempered old man. Even Heston, who is indebted to Cooper, has trouble dealing with his attitude. This is especially true in those courtroom scenes when the movie rolls out some big British guns in the form of Michael Redgrave, Cecil Parker, and Emmeline Williams. And then there's a young Richard Harris, who is not really the villain, but the villain's henchman. He's a nasty bit of business and a bit of a blowhard, and Harris is well cast in the part. The movie regains its footing as we set out to sea again to stop the bad guys from sinking the beached Mary Deare and covering up their crime. To prove his case, Cooper must examine the crates that held the jet engines and which he now believes are empty. Using scuba gear, Coop and Heston swim out to the wreck as Harris and his crew prepare to sink her. But Harris spots their underwater flashlights. Inside the cargo hold, Coop and Heston discovered that the crates are filled with rocks and not jet engines. So, Coop was right all along. But Harris is waiting for them. As they make their way out of the hold, he stabs Heston with a harpoon. Heston is badly wounded in the arm, but still strong enough to follow Coop's plan as he ties the two underwater flashlights together. Heston swims forward with the flashlights, making it appear that it's both divers, as Cooper follows from behind and gets the jump on Harris as he strikes again. And so, in the end, the good guys win. And in the last shot, Cooper stands justified. So, what makes those opening and closing acts work? Yes, it's partially the seaborne adventure, but for me, it's the work. The work of the designers and technicians behind the scenes that brought those sequences to life. If you've ever had to work in dark and damp places, if you've ever worked in foul or inclement weather, whether you're a sailor, a fireman, a maintenance person, or anyone who's ever done hard physical labor, then this movie will strike a chord in you. You'll get it because you've been there. See you around the campus.